Hi, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Mailers. I'm Paul Bobnak for Who's Mailing What, and here with me today is Randy Hardy. He is the North American representative for locr, and we're talking about the power of personalization in direct mail, specifically location data geomarketing. Now, before we get started, if you have any questions or feedback, please comment in the box below. You can show your support for our videos by tapping the like button, and to get notified of when we add new videos to the Who's Mailing What channel, click on subscribe. Now let's meet the mailers. Hi, Randy. Welcome. Good to see you again.
And Paul, thank you for having me today.
Oh, you're welcome. Let's start by talking about your background. How did you get involved in the world of print and marketing, and what does your job involve?
Well, let's start off that I had very brown hair when I started in the print business. And of course, you see what color it is now.
Yeah.
So it's been a very long road. I first got into the business as a salesperson for more business forms back in the 80s. That's how long ago. Drawing copy by hand, sending it to the plant. They would do something that you and I know called blue lines.
Yeah, I remember them.
But not a lot of people, younger people, have any idea what those ugly things are.
Yeah.
As well, they shouldn't anymore.
No.
Then I became a print broker on my own for about 5 years. I did more for about 5 years, by the way. Became a print broker on my own for about 5 years. In that part of the business, I was focusing on pressure-sensitive labels, doing barcodes. Back in at that time, that was a kind of unique thing. So, there was good market and margin to be had doing that. Then I sold that business. And I started the U.S. for a French company, doing composition software, print stream engineering software, and shop floor management tools. So basically, if you were a very large shop, and by the way, that was focused on the transactional space.
Okay.
So it was almost all about mailing something, by the way, right? Especially back then. And so the first big thing we did was the phone bill for this little company called Bell South, which of course is now part of AT&T once again.
Yep.
But right around the turn of the century, we were doing a very, very complex application with all kinds of different types of data, combining it into one, taking 6 different bills, combining it into one. It was a huge win for Bell South, and of course for us, because that established us in the U.S. market. By the way, the company was called CFAS. They're still around. I'm not affiliated with them any longer. And so I did that for about 8 years, running the U.S. and building that market up for them. Did a few other small European software companies. And then, 10 years ago, I ran into these guys at the Explore conference called locr.
Right.
And I said, oh, so the funny coincidence is I've been the chairman for many years, including back then. And that particular year, Skip and I decided to split the list of new people coming, to call them in advance, coming from Europe, and so I happened to call this company called locr just to, see if there's anything they needed coming over, whatnot. And we start talking, and, what do you do? I said, I kind of have a specialty helping European companies make an entry into the U.S. market. And he goes, oh, that's funny. We kind of need that. And so when he came over to the show, we had a further conversation, and the rest, as they say, is history. Here we are today.
Right. Yeah, it's been a long, strange trip, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you consider, starting out from zero is certainly not the easiest thing.
Yeah.
But I was lucky that there's a company called Trek Maps at that time that was actually getting out of the business. And so GE was very coincidental at first, but then purposeful on his part once he saw how good we were, and we were, not to be rude, but a much better offering anyway.
Yeah.
He started referring his customers to us. And so I got a little bit of a jump start by bringing over some of his customers to build the market. Now, I'm currently in rebuild mode because, during the pandemic, if you're not allowed to go anywhere, you don't need maps to show you where not to go.
Right. Yeah.
So we took a big hit from the pandemic, and we are building up again, and fortunately, and things are going pretty well again. But like you said, it's been a pretty wild ride, starting from nothing, building it up, taking that big hit, and now building it up again.
Yep. And you manage the U.S. sales and marketing for locr, right?
Yes, there's really only me here in the U.S., by the way.
Yep.
And that's because we don't sell direct. We only sell through either printers or marketing agencies because we create data in a JPEG. What's a customer going to do with that?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Unless you have a composition tool and you're composing pages, you really don't want to be dealing with me. And by the way, I don't want to be dealing with the end users that don't understand what I do and the fact that it's got to be put into a page and it has to resonate with the entire mail piece, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just dealing with professionals and I support them in the marketplace. So, it's not like I need a sales force of 300 dealing with partners. As once you get them up and running, they're pretty self-sufficient, and you move on and get some new ones.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll get into some more of that in a bit. Let me just jump right into it and talk about locr and the power of location data. What are the advantages of locr's products and services for marketers as well as for printers?
Yeah, it's actually getting even more and more valuable, simply because one of the big things we do is saving money on postage. And as USPS keeps climbing the scales, the ability to save people with postage is obviously getting more and more important.
Yeah.
So there's really three things that we do. We do customer targeting. So we can take a CSV list of recipients, and then we have another list of the destination or destinations. And we can calculate the actual driving distance in minutes or in distance, miles. And we can then take a look at that, and the customer can give us rules. And we had one customer that ran a very large campaign for a very long time. And their rule was, we want to show the 6 closest stores, but none more than 8 driving miles away. We're like, okay, those are the rules. So we did that campaign. The net result of that was that we became a negative cost to the job. In that we suppressed enough people that the savings in postage outweighed the cost of our services. So, well, if you can get better results while saving money, that's kind of interesting for an ROI discussion.
It's pretty powerful, yeah.
Yeah, and so that second part, acquiring the customers. So I have a mail piece here that I'll show you.
Okay.
One that we did for many years for AARP.
Right.
Okay. And what this is, they want you to go to a safe driver's course. Right.
Yep.
And so this started shortly after I started US Market. An ad agency was at an XMPI user group, and I was presenting. And about 2 months later, they called me up and said, hey, I think we could do something here. Well, yeah, we sure could. And the net of it was they wanted to suppress people that were too far away. I mean, are you going to drive 50 miles to take a safe driver course? I'm not.
Yeah, right.
So initially, the only intent was to save some cost. But, and so first we did a test of 10,000 pieces. Then we did a test of 250,000. Then we started doing 600,000, 700,000, 800,000 records a month.
Wow.
So by the end of the first year, we'd done processed about 3 million records. We had disqualified about 500,000. Well, do the math. That's an awful lot of money in postage and even some print, of course, that we saved them. But, and by the way, sometimes printers get a little intimidated that we're suppressing print.
Right.
Whoa, Randy, I'm trying to print more, not less, right?
Right.
So this is very instructive on that, because at the end of that year, as I said, they lost out on 500,000 prints. Except at the end of the year, they looked at the increase in response rate, which was 70, and that is 70%.
Wow.
Now, even if I wasn't saving money, they would have kept on doing this, right?
Yeah.
This is on top of the money I'm saving them from that suppression. So, they're not stupid people. They doubled the program the next year to 6 million records. And so maybe we suppress, I don't know, 1 million, but that means the printer still got 5 million when he used to get 3.
Yeah.
So the power of ROI is a printer's best friend, because you don't lose business when you're making people money.
Right. And it just builds from there.
Right, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so we have one more piece that's relatively new to us. I know we're going to talk a little more about it later, but we now have the ability to bridge the print world with the online world.
Okay.
Okay. So really three things: targeting, acquisition, and making it accessible across electronic mediums.
Okay. Well, getting like into like a bigger picture, why is it that maps work in geomarketing, to increase response rates, ROI, and otherwise, make it like an easier marketing decision?
Yeah, this was highly interesting. It was a couple of years before I was able to get statistics about this, by the way, because I mean, obviously from AARP, we could see it worked, right? We gave them a map, people started showing up. They actually had a problem with too many people showing up sometimes because they would rent hotel rooms for these classes and they'd make it for, say, 5 or 6, and all of a sudden 15 people showed up and they're like, oh, I need a bigger room.
Right.
Pretty good problem to have, right? Too many
Nice problem
responses.
to have.
Yeah. But the key thing, and direct mailers are always talking about this. Well, the more it's personalized, the higher the response rates, right?
Yeah.
So if you go back to the old spray and pray days, where basically name and address and that was it, and maybe dear sir, right?
That's it.
Now with tools like XMPie and Quadient and things like that, you can get very sophisticated messaging, obviously. And so this is continuing that personalization. So when you buy lists or have your own list and you do your data mining, and so you're looking at what's their income, do they have children, what's their education, et cetera, et cetera. So you could hit all of those attributes, but if they're too far away, they're still not coming.
Yeah, not relevant.
Yeah, perfect customer, except, gee, no thanks.
Yeah.
So you're wasting all your money marketing to people that aren't showing up.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing, though, is that if it is relevant distance or time-wise, what's more important and what's more personal to you other than spouse or significant other, children, and a pet? Where you live.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you see the map and you see where you live, you can't not look at it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Your eyes are drawn to it. And the other beauty, we got some information from MIT, which we've created a white paper, The Power of Maps.
Good one.
And by the way, you did a white paper for us on similar things before we had that data.
That's right. Yeah.
And the MIT has calculated that an infographic, so it's not just a map, but of course in printing, we understand that infographics are images that convey information.
Right.
And so, of course, by definition, a map is one of those infographics. A, your eye is drawn to it, plain and simple. And B, it takes your brain less than a quarter of a second to get the message. Because we've been looking at images for millions of years, haven't we? Meaning pictures.
Yeah.
This Gutenberg guy only came around, what, 600-700 years ago?
Right.
So our brains are not supersized for text. They are supersized for looking at something.
Right.
And the best example of that is I have a PowerPoint that I give where I bring up a map of just an address in text. Sorry, not a map yet. Just the text of an address in DC. And so I ask everybody, oh, do you know where that is? Oh, they say, well, it must be Pennsylvania Avenue. I said, well, no, you can see the address is not Pennsylvania Avenue. Long story short, of course, nobody knows where it is. And that's kind of the point of my setup, right? So then I click and a map comes up showing that it's literally next to the Capitol building. And everybody goes, oh, I know where that is. So us humans need context, not data.
Yeah.
It's the same information, but now we're portraying the information instead of telling you the data.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like with like emojis on your phone, and
Absolutely.
they cut across all cultures, so you can just communicate in emojis like they were hieroglyphics and not even use text.
But it's funny you say that because my marketing team, I tried to get them on that emoji bandwagon a few years ago.
Right.
I said the same thing because listen, basically, like you said, it's like an emoji. You see something and you immediately understand it and you can react to it. And I couldn't get them to come along with me on that mission, but they did do the Power of Maps, which was wonderful, and powerful. So we were kind of happy with that.
Good. Yeah. Well, one getting to something you talked about before, which is a big concern. The cost of mailing campaigns, right? It's on everybody's mind. There are a lot of different factors in that. So how does using maps like locr does, how does that help lower costs?
Yeah, so there's two parts of that. One part of it is about lowering the cost. So in that campaign, I was saying before about, close to 6, but none more than 8 driving miles, right?
Right.
So the printer was actually, the first time the job came to me, he just gave me the data and said, make the maps. And so, I just thought it was a one-off job. I made maps.
Yeah.
6 weeks later, it came back again. I go, oh, cool. Well, and then again, third job. On the third job, I said, wait a minute. Who's doing all this targeting? Oh, I've got that covered. I've got all these hardcore programmers. I got X and Pi, I've got Quadient. I can do all that. I said, no, you can't. I said, you don't have my tools. The smartest guys in the world are still constrained by the type of tools they're using. What I was referring to, of course, was that he was doing straight line calculations, and I'm doing the actual driving distance. And the best example of that is I live on the North Shore of Long Island, and I get mail pieces asking me to go to Connecticut 6 miles away.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't feel like getting wet.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's literally 100 miles to go out and around on the bridges, or
Right.
I got to spend an awful lot of money to go 10 miles to get a ferry. And so that marketer, well, those marketers, because I get them all the time, are completely wasting their money marketing to me, when I'm not even remotely close to these people.
Yeah.
And so that's the power of location at work. But let me show you another sample here I've got, Paul.
Oh, great.
It's a small one. So this was only 2,500 mail pieces. I don't know how well you can see that there, right?
Yep.
Now you see that's a fold over, right?
Yeah.
And you can see we got the map on the front, which was smart because, that draws your attention. You see in the back here, there's a tipped on plastic card for $10 off. Okay.
Nice.
So it was only 2,500 pieces. Now in my business, one of the obstacles of using my technology is the cost per piece. And on small quantities, of course, the cost per piece goes up because, you got setup fees and things like that, just like make ready on a press, right?
Yep.
And so sometimes on smaller projects, it's not always easy to justify. And up front, this one wasn't, but this printer out of Tulsa was able to make the sale for us with his customer. And at the back end, 2,500 of these. Now, with that tipped on card and my map, and it's actually a 3-pane foldover. This is not a cheap mail piece, especially for 2,500. What, $1 a piece, something like that, with postage and everything?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he really cared about how much the mail piece cost when he had a 24% redemption rate.
Whoa. Oh, nice.
600 of these things were cashed in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mail something properly using all the correct tools, both data and visual. And guess what? Mailing is cheap, not expensive.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Very cool.
So that's one of the ways that you can employ technology and the data to be more precise about who you're marketing to. Another problem, by the way, for this company is called McNelly's, is when they opened up a new store. It just so happened geography-wise, there was this big hill, and people just plain weren't finding it. So they had one of these that they took in the car with them, and they go, oh, all I got to do is go a little bit further, and I'm going to run into it. They had to go up and over the hill.
Yeah. And that's all it was.
As simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so awesome. So how exactly does implementing geomarketing work? Can you take us through the basic process needed, to generate a map and to put it onto a mail piece like this?
Yeah. So it's actually really, what we do is really complex. Fortunately, we made it really easy for you to do.
Okay.
Customers, of course. Because doing all this stuff, the magic that happens on our servers, I'm a business person, not a technical guy like my guys back in Germany. They're brilliant. I don't know how they do it, but they do. So the simplicity is that all you need to do is give us a CSV list of your recipients.
Okay.
After CAS and NCOA, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't want to be mailing to where they were, right?
Right, right.
Or making a map and they get a map that doesn't match the address there. So of course you have to go through your CAS and your NCOA. So you give me a CSV list of the recipients, then you give me a CSV list of the destinations or destination. Sometimes it's just going to one place, like McNally's was. But if there's multiple, you give me those. And then if there are rules, like the rule might be I just want the closest one. Fine, we do that. But again, as I mentioned before, they can be far more complex. We did a project up in Canada for the Canadian Automobile Association, so like our AAA.
Right.
And they gave us 10 groups of data, and we had to pick the closest from the first group, which was your local CAA office, then the closest from the next one, which was a bunch of vendors, and all the way down. Now, what was really interesting about this program is that they were charging people to be on the map.
Oh, okay.
So they were making money by the time they put it in the mail. And that was another important thing about our technology is everyone, of course, is infatuated with Google Maps, and 99.9% of the time they should be. It's just amazing technology, especially for all the things we want to find out around us and whatnot.
Right.
The one area they're not real strong, is in the print world.
Yeah, of course,
and certainly not because they can't be. They've got brilliant, brilliant people. They don't care to be.
Right.
The market is not big enough. They want markets from $100 million or above, you know, and the print market for maps is just not strong enough for them to care.
Right.
And so the beauty is we can do things they can't. So first of all, when you get a map from Google, you tell them what you want. I want to go from here to there. And they take all the elements and they slap it on top of the digital map of the world. There you go. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Well, in our world, it's a little bit more complex than that. So you can think of us as a composition tool for geo data.
Oh, okay.
So we take raw data, and then we take what you're interested in, and then we actually draw every single map from scratch. And so we can do things like the street name is cut in half at the edge. We actually move the street name over. Or if there's not room to move it over, we delete it because half a name is more confusing than no name.
True. Yeah.
If there's going to be pins on top of each other, if it's multiple destinations, right? Well, in the case of CAA, if you were paying to be on that map, would you be happy if I put somebody else's marker on top of yours?
No.
Heck no. Of course, in the Google world, and of course, that works online. Our medium doesn't work so much.
Right.
So there's lots of ugly things that we do, just like any other business does, of course, for their customers. But we've really honed it for print and direct mail very specifically.
Okay.
Oh, and by the way, the last part of it is once you give us those lists, we do all the work. We send you back the maps and or data. All you got to do is pull down the images, the CSV list that you sent us. If you want extra data, we just append that list.
Gotcha.
Another important element, by the way, because this is very important when we do a lot of healthcare mailings, is that when you send us the list, we require that you give us a unique ID for every record.
Oh, that's important, right? Yeah.
Now, it can be as simple as if it's 10,000 recipients, it's number 1 to 10,000. We don't care.
Yeah.
It just has to be unique, not repeated, right? What's critical for the end user to understand, though, is that that's what we use to identify the record, not first name, last name.
Right. Okay.
So, in fact, many of our healthcare customers delete first name, last name from the records they send us. So now they're sending us anonymized data, not PII. Right?
Yep.
And so even if we got hacked, it's just a bunch of addresses with a unique ID.
Yep. Yep. That's it.
And so that keeps it more secure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's absolutely important too. It's a big concern of people. And these maps can be incorporated into any type of mail format.
Yes. So we do everything as a RGB JPEG.
Okay.
And I've had customers, by the way, say, well, I want CMYK as a PDF. And I said, well, no, you don't. Because two things. One, you'd have to strip the image out of the PDF to insert it. And that's just an extra step you just don't need to be doing.
No.
JPEGs compress the best because we're sending these things through the internet, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
And then they reinflate with the best fidelity when you get them and open them up. Right? So, the transmittal medium kind of matters, especially sometimes we do millions of maps. Well, even with FTPs, that's chug, 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 right?
Yeah.
The other thing, though, that I explained to people, and I just recently got some stuff about it, RGB has a bigger gamut than CMYK.
Yeah.
And with RGB, your color management software should be deciding how to render the CMYK, not us. We don't know your color management, right?
Right.
And if you're a small shop and not that sophisticated, well, then your RIP will manage that RGB to CMYK. So we really only want to be making RGB JPEGs because that's the most vanilla and the cleanest transmission format. And that way, when our customers get them, bam, they get a great image on the page.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, recently you've introduced locrFINDER, and that's like a location finder that can be incorporated with a print campaign, like direct mail, or a website or an app. So can you talk about how that works and why it's really a game changer in a lot of ways?
Yeah, thank you. I'll go. So we just introduced it at Printing United, by the way, where you and I were together there.
Yep.
That was the launch for the product. Little slow uptake because, of course, we're dealing mostly with printers, and technically they're still learning these types of things, right?
Yes, of course.
Although the pandemic was a help to QR codes.
Yeah.
People got used to them with menus and all other types of things, right? And so there's really, let's call it 4 ways to use our locrFINDER. So the simplest one is that there's a QR code next to the map, like say on this McNally's, right? We would have had a QR code.
Right.
The user scans the QR code and it automatically activates the phone GPS and shows them how to get there so they don't have to type everything into their phone.
Right.
That's certainly useful.
Yes.
But then there's a couple other ways to utilize it. The next one is more interesting. We actually just went live with a program in Florida 2 weeks ago with the first implementation in the US. And that one is for a healthcare system. So when you get a map and it shows you, I think, the closest to, but none more than 10 miles for the print version.
Okay.
But when you scan the QR code, all the locations are in the QR code and they expand the area of what they might offer you locations. Because it's one part that you and I both understand about direct mail and not everybody else does. We're almost always mailing to their house. That's not necessarily where they want to consume our service.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And so on the online version can move. Like I said, you can give greater options. So, oh my gosh, I got a place a quarter mile from my office. Bing, you got a customer that you would not have had perhaps if it was showing just from the home. And we can even do things like multiple logos and services. So in the healthcare, we can show the house, then one logo for the PCP, another logo for walk-in clinic, and another logo for a hospital. And so in the Finder app, you can just touch one of those and immediately shows you how to get there. Touch another one, it shows you how to get there. All that searching activity typically would be consumed by all the search engine and sold.
Right.
And the healthcare people aren't real happy with that idea.
No.
And that's another beauty of having the servers in Germany. Europe a few years ago came up with something called General Data Protection Rules, GDPR. And that's why now on most websites, they tell you we're giving you cookies and you have to click that button, right? Accept or decline.
Yeah.
Right. That started from the GDPR rules and it's proliferated. Well, Germany is even more stringent on the data privacy rules than the rest of Europe. So the simple answer is that it's illegal for us to sell that search data. However, we can give it back to who gave us that data for free. And so that can be highly useful because maybe you see somebody was searching, but didn't actually click through because, maybe they didn't have a broken leg that day. But now they know where they can go for care when they do have a broken leg or whatever the case may be, right?
Right.
So now the hospital system can see these people that actually scanned the QR code. So obviously showing a higher level of interest than people that didn't respond at all, right?
Yes.
And so you actually get a better handle of what the open rate was from getting this data from the QR code.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can be very, very powerful. And like I said, we actually, I think the job launched just like 2 days ago, and we've already seen several hundred scans of the QR codes. And when we do that, I'm not going to get specific, but just to show you, there's a bunch of different reports that we can create showing, this one is by visits by day, visits by hour, visits by their postal code, so you can see a heat map about where they're hitting. And then you can export that information, including a picture or a CSV file if you wanted this data. As you go further in time, we'll give you, let me see, better reports over how many days and peak days. And let's face it, when you launch a campaign, you know there's going to be a ramp-up spike, and you know that there's going to be a slowdown.
Right.
And by the way, that's probably when you're going to decide when to turn off the locrFINDER.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Although this company is going to keep it on all the time because this is a new mover campaign.
Right. Yep.
So they do new movers every single month. And so every single month, it'll just be different people accessing the locrFINDER, but it'll always be active. This one just shows in pictorial format where the users were clicking. And again, this was sample data. We can't show real data because of data privacy laws.
Of course, right.
This is my guys just doing some clicking in Germany. And then you can even zoom into one address if you want, which is what this one is.
Wow.
And again, because you gave us that data, you are entitled to have that. And then there's one more usage, which we haven't really gotten to yet, but I think could be a very big one. And that would be EDDM.
Okay.
Every door direct mail, for those of you who aren't familiar with the acronym.
Right, USPS.
And so this is unaddressed mail, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get mail to current resident, or it doesn't even have anything. They just throw it into your mailbox, right?
Yes.
And the beauty is, of course, that's very cheap, right? That's why people do it. They don't want to pay for personalization and the extra postage, because, of course, post office gives them a discount for unaddressed mail as well.
Mm-hmm. Another benefit.
Right. But one beauty of our locrFINDER is you could create one QR code that you print for all those EDDM pieces. And now you have a personalized EDDM campaign, because the QR code, when it scans, senses where the phone is.
Right. Location data on your phone. Yep.
And what's funny, by the way, just yesterday, I was in Florida. And remember, I was just talking about this healthcare thing that we went live with.
Right.
I scanned it and showed, and of course it worked because now I'm in Florida. In New York, if I scan it, it doesn't work because I'm not within 15 miles of any of their locations.
Awesome. Yeah.
Right.
It works.
So, I mean, so the beauty is that you could have this for across states. It doesn't matter, because the rule is show them the closest wherever, and you wouldn't be mailing where you don't have places, of course. Right.
Of course. Right. Yeah.
And so one QR code. So you could even print this litho, by the way. Doesn't even have to be digital, right? Just a single QR code.
Yeah, that's
takes
it.
Into our server. The only one little clawback that I'll give you, once you hit take all that search activity, as I said, touch, 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 is all protected. Once you push the button, take me there, then we activate your phone's GPS, Apple, Google, whatever you're using.
Right.
And of course, that's not our application. So now we can't protect you. Your map company does know that you're going to this place.
Right. Okay.
But all the search activity, nobody knows anything about except for us and you.
Yeah. Wow, that's impressive. I mean, each of those, I think there are, when you really think about it, there are so many uses that can go off in all these different directions just from that.
Well, and I have one I'm working on for a printer up in north central US, let's just say.
Okay.
The marketing lady called me, I don't know, a week or so ago. You know, we do a calendar for our customers every year. So she's already working on next year's calendar.
Yeah, you have to, yeah.
And this is actually a big litho shop. I went to visit them. I mean, it's a very large facility. They own, I say, quote unquote, only have 2 Indigo 12,000s for digital. But compared to the size facility, that is only, even though that's pretty good firepower. But she's like, yeah, so we want to print these maps for, or these calendars for all our customers. So she says, I'm thinking I'd like to do something around Route 66. So long story short, we're not done developing it yet, but so far we've developed the idea that when you scan the QR code, it shows a map of the U.S., and then it shows the route from Chicago all the way to the Santa Monica Pier.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got some little dots along the way, POI, points of interest, right?
Okay.
Then down the side, you got the months, January through December. If you click on a month, it zooms into Chicago if it's January, because that's where you're starting. And it shows you additional points of interest in that area. Another month you click on, it then zooms into what that area and those points of interest are. And so you, of course, have walked all the way through. Now, they're going to do more development on this, so that's not the end result of what's going to get done. But this is an idea, like you just said, that there's so many other uses you could use in media campaigns to do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's not even really direct mail. It's just print campaigns, that you just have. Yeah, pretty impressive.
Exactly.
I mean, it's kind of mind blowing because, like I said, I think if you just think about the short term campaigns, the long term campaigns, like you mentioned with the health system. I mean, there's so many different ways to use just those technologies all by themselves.
Yeah. And there's one thing I left out, by the way. I'm looking at my notes. When you were talking about mail formats and the JPEGs, one thing I forgot to mention is these are 300 DPI JPEGs.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Except for us, DPI is just a setting.
Yeah.
We could do 253 if you wanted for some strange reason, okay? The important part of that is we do have some customers that do a print campaign, and 2 weeks later, they launch into an email campaign to follow up on that print campaign.
Right. Okay.
And so we'll render 300s for the print campaign, of course, because you don't need more than 300. Even if you're doing printing 12 by 12,
the
map doesn't look any better, and now you've got heavier images, right?
Yeah.
So 300 is really the optimal for a map. But we'll give them 72s that they can use online and in their email campaigns.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different uses for that. So, talking about direct mail marketing in general, what trends do you see happening in the next, year, couple years down the line?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One, I kind of touched on this in the beginning, with USPS aggressively raising rates. And I saw an article last month in a print magazine. They are so misdirected there. I'm not trying to be rude, but they think, oh, well, if we raise the cost, then we'll offset our losses.
Yeah.
Yeah, except people use your product less, so then you actually lose more money.
Right. The vicious circle.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at right now, because they raised the rates aggressively. First class mail volumes have dropped. So they actually lost more money rather than raising more money. And so sadly, this will probably be good for my business, because that makes every single mail piece even more precious.
True.
Meaning you need to be far more efficient in your targeting and your mailing campaign so that you can maintain that ROI even with that high cost of delivery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're getting a 24% response rate,
yeah, like that.
Yeah, you could probably keep even with the added cost, you're going to keep doing those campaigns, right?
Right.
But there's another piece, especially with my German friends, they're a little bit more on the forefront of this, although there's certainly lots of US companies doing this as well, and that's sustainability.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, why are you sending out mail pieces that no one's going to even look at?
Mm.
So both from a pure cost standpoint, ROI, but also from a sustainability perspective, hey, only mail to people that this is actually relevant to, and we can help do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of brands also want that part of their brand image as well, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of brand image, one thing I left out earlier when I was talking about the way that we make these maps one-off, there's this bank that you might have heard of called Bank of America.
Yeah.
And we've done maps for them numerous ways and whatnot. I'm not going to get into specifics, but there was one campaign where they wanted the background theme of the map to essentially be blue and red.
Right. Okay. Their colors.
And guess what? Since we don't make our maps in advance, we made them blue and red maps, and of course white, because you have to have the offset. But so these were red, white, and blue maps. And G, your brand certainly comes through when the entire theme of the map, let alone the data that we put on it, and your logo is your branded color.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's another very sophisticated thing that we can do. And for us, it's not really that hard.
Right, right. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap things up. How can people contact you and locr to find out more about all these great solutions you have?
Well, thank you for that. The first thing most people are going to want to do before they have to talk to some sales guy like me is they're simply going to want to go to www.locr.com. By the way, locr, the word was a play on words. Locr, before I even came along, started off as a image storage site. So kind of like competing with Flickr.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so it was a locker to store your images.
Yeah. Yeah.
Germans like to twist American words, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we got to locr. So locr.com has a wealth of knowledge about all the things we do. It's got case studies, which of course are also important to people to understand how and why to use this technology. So you can get all those resources, locr.com, without having to put up the listening with me. But if you get to the point that you, still need more, and by the way, even our white papers, including the one from Paul, is on our website. So yeah, you can go and get those things. But if you get to the point where you actually want to do some business or you just have some questions, then you can get me at r.hardy@locr.com, or my cell phone is 516-449-5154.
Great. Awesome. Well, Randy Hardy from locr, thank you again so much for being here today on Meet the Mailers. And I want to thank all of you out there for joining us today. And if you have any questions or feedback for us or for my guest, you can leave that on the box below. You can show your support for our program by tapping the like button and click on subscribe to be notified of new videos. If you want to be highlighted in a future Meet the Mailers episode, I'd love to hear from you. So just tap show more in the paragraph below for my contact information. Thanks again for watching Meet the Mailers, and see you next time.